Hello students, welcome to today's class. In today's class, we'll study about the batteries management and handling rules of 2001. Plus, we'll also see a few amendments, especially that of the year 2010 and the recent one that is 2022. So we'll see all the amendments also. So the very important thing that we'll study in this particular lecture is the very first thing that is pertaining to your batteries. Where is this particular rule applicable? So we'll see the applicability. Okay. Thereafter, we'll move to a definition part. Again, for understanding the act, you must be very clear with the definitions. Okay. Otherwise, it will create ambiguity and because of which the dispute resolution becomes very difficult. So the definition should be very clear. They are not anything trivial. Okay. And then we'll also see the responsibility of all the stakeholders that are related to batteries management and handling. Okay. And then we'll see what is the process of registration or authorization. Okay. And then we'll also see how these battery waste are collected. So we'll see the collection part, we'll see the storage part, and how they are basically transported. That is also what we are going to see in this. Okay. Plus, there are also certain provision of how you can actually recycle them and actually dispose them off. So we'll also see the disposal of it. Okay. Moreover, as any other law, will also see what are the penalties associated with it and how you're actually going to enforce this particular law. So we'll see the enforcement part also, enforcement or implementation part. But and what are the challenges that are related to the enforcement of this particular act? Later on, we'll compare this original act with 2010 amendment, what additional was brought in from the 2010 amendment, and we'll also have a look at the recent one in uh, that is actually active as of today. Okay, so let's move to our first slide. That is the batteries management and handling rule of 2001. So as we previously talked that the original rule came in the year 2001, then we got this amendment rule of 2010, which actually strengthened the framework for managing the use of specifically the lead acid battery. Okay, and then further we have this uh, amendment that came in the year 2002. So this actually introduced this EPR and recycling targets additionally. Okay, so let's see them one by one. Okay, so now let's talk about the original rule. Let's just have an overview of all the uh, rules and amendments that we have in place. So the very first one is obviously the original one, that is the 2001. So this was basically notified on May 16, 2001. This is not that important, but you must know a little bit because when we talk about the chapter 1, which actually talks about the enforcement, so there this date is mentioned. So that's why I specifically mentioned this, right? And as any other law, this also was enacted under the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. So this rule we just saw in our previous slide that we are also going to talk about the applicability. So this rule is applicable on manufacturers, your importers, assemblers, reconditioners, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are basically the stakeholders. Okay, and all kind of people, basically those who are involved in the manufacturing, processing, right, sale, purchase of any battery or anything, if they're anyhow dealing with the batteries or the components thereof, batteries or their components, so they will be directly or indirectly covered in this particular act. Okay, so the rule is going to establish the responsibility for the collection, recycling, and also how you're going to actually dispose them of, and especially they're talking about the lead acid batteries. Okay, so that is what we are going to see in this. Okay, now let's move to amendments of 20. All right, now let's come to the amendment of 2010, which actually came to improve the effectiveness of the original act of 2001. So this basically tried to ensure the better management of the battery waste and its components, basically. Okay, so it was notified on 4th May 2010, and basically to address all the challenges that were pertaining to the previous act, and then how can we actually strengthen the original act. So that's why this particular amendment was brought in. So how it actually strengthened the previous act? So it made the registration mandatory. So all the importers, dealers and recyclers were actually mandated to register with Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, or if or any other agency that could be designated for the same purpose. And then buyback obligation was mandated on the manufacturer and importers. Why? Because this way they'll be collecting the waste, whatever the waste are, especially the battery waste we are talking about here. So they will collecting the battery waste and then they'll be recycling the waste. Okay, then they also have to keep the record, and then they have to also submit the returns to what? SPCBs. Okay, so that was also introduced under this amendment. And then there was also a mention of consumer responsibility. Here the consumers were also encouraged to return the batteries to the dealers, or you know they also had a designated collection center, so you can, as a customer, can return these waste. Okay, and then the recycling standards were also enhanced so as to minimize the environmental impact of these battery waste. So overall, in a nutshell, we can say that this was done to improve the effectiveness of the 2001 rules. Okay, now let's move to the next slide. All right, now let's start with the very basics or the introduction of this act. So, as you know, um, all the acts they have first title that this act will be called as the Batteries Management and Handling Rule of 2001. Then it was amended on which date? 2010, we all know. Then what's the Enabling Act? 1986. And what's the objective? It's to collect, recycle and dispose any lead acid batteries. Okay, so that is what is the motto of this particular act. Now we'll talk about the applicability. Okay, so we have previously seen that this particular all the rules that we just saw, uh, they are actually legal framework for whom? For your manufacturers, for importers, whosoever is dealing with that, or sort of recyclers you can think of, and you as a consumer also. So they have, you all have to, collectively we all have to manage this battery very responsibly. Okay, now we'll talk about the applicability. So these rules, they are going to apply to wide range of stakeholders that we just mentioned. Okay, so basically anyone who produces, sells, buys, or even uses the lead acid batteries must comply to this particular rule. So basically, it covers all the stages from manufacturers to final disposal, ensuring that there is a closed loop system for battery management. Okay. Now we'll see the very important thing in any act, that is the definition. So you must have a very clear cut knowledge of what does this battery means. So this battery is going to refer to what? Specifically the lead acid storage battery. Okay, so this is the meaning of battery. Now, what is the meaning of used battery? So it's any battery that is, discarded after use. Okay. Now, bulk consumers means bulk. We are talking about, when you try to uh,